Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain American Assassin. This movie tells the story of a man who lost his girlfriend to a terrorist attack just as they were engaged. Seeking revenge, he then infiltrates the headquarters of the terrorists to kill their leader, and is then recruited by the CIA. Will he be able to carry out his mission as an American assassin? Let's find out in American Assassin. American Assassin begins by showing a man named Mitch Rapp and his girlfriend, Katrina Harper, who are on vacation in Ibiza, Spain. Because they have been in a relationship for a long time, Rapp intends to propose to Katrina with a ring that is used as a necklace pendant. Rapp looks happy when recording their moments together on the beach, and the moments when he proposes to the woman he loves. After that, Rapp took the initiative to buy drinks for himself and his girlfriend. However, suddenly, Rapp's happiness turns into a nightmare when a group of terrorists storm the place, shooting people indiscriminately, injuring Rapp and killing Katrina. 18 months later, Rapp, now overcome by his desire for revenge, has trained himself intensively in martial arts and marksmanship. Not only that, Rapp also finds out about the terrorist group responsible for Katrina's death and tries to get in touch with them. Rapp did everything he could to get accepted into the terrorist group, and that way, he could avenge the death of his late lover directly. Rapp managed to establish contact with a man named Adnan, the leader of the terrorist group. Rapp tries to convince the man of his hatred of the United States and his desire to join the group. Meanwhile, in one of his rehearsals, Rapp, who is ambitious for revenge, seems to have difficulty controlling his emotions, so that he almost fatally injures his opponent in a sparring match. Unbeknownst to Rapp, it turned out that all this time, his movements were monitored by the CIA, especially after Rapp was able to establish contact with Adnan, the leader of a terrorist group who is also being targeted by the CIA. After that, Rapp reconnected with Adnan, where Adnan began to question Rapp further and in detail to see his sincerity. Rapp finally managed to convince Adnan, and got an invitation to meet him in person in Libya. When Rapp finally meets Adnan and prepares to take revenge on the man responsible for the death of his lover, suddenly their hiding location is ambushed by a group of United States Special Forces, where Adnan is killed in the attack. Rapp was immediately furious because he could not kill Adnan with his own hands, so Rapp vented his frustration by repeatedly stabbing the terrorist he was chasing, who had died in ambush, before being dragged out by US troops from the place. In a CIA facility, Rapp was interrogated for his actions, which were quite extreme, by entering the most dangerous terrorist headquarters without proper preparation. But Rapp said that he had prepared for a long time because he was determined to take revenge. When they considered punishing Rapp for his reckless actions, Rapp defended himself by citing his achievement of being able to locate the terrorists' headquarters and meet their leader, an accomplishment that no CIA agent or any Special Forces agents could accomplish. Therefore, Rapp underwent 30 days of debriefing. Rapp was then offered the opportunity by the CIA Deputy Director, a woman named Irene Kennedy, to join the Black Operations Unit codenamed Orion. Irene then brought Rapp to meet the head of Orion, Stan Hurley, a former member of the United States Navy SEAL and also a Cold War veteran, who will train Rapp as well as the other potential recruits in asymmetric warfare. Knowing that Rapp's actions in finding and infiltrating the most dangerous terrorist base, Hurley reminded Rapp that his achievements did not guarantee Rapp could be accepted as a member of his team. Rapp then challenged Hurley to immediately train him so that the man could judge for himself whether he deserved to join his team or not. When Hurley started his training and gathered the entire team, including Rapp, the man taught the correct fighting style in a Black Operation unit that would support the success of the mission being carried out. Hurley then asks Rapp to fight a man named Victor, one of Hurley's recruits, and manages to defeat him.
Back of your head.
Hurley not only taught about alertness and vigilance that every member of his team should have, but also taught him to control his emotions while on a mission. When Rapp and the rest of the team were asked to drop the predetermined targets, and would be electrocuted if they virtually killed other people's targets, Rapp immediately reignited when he saw Adnan's image and continued to attack him even though Adnan was not his target. However, when the other recruits succumb to being electrocuted, Rapp continues to do so, killing the non-target Adnan, and ignoring the pain he receives. On the other hand, Hurley and Irene who were watching Rapp looked a little disappointed, but also impressed with Rapp. The scene then switches, and shows Irene and several important US officials visiting the Iranian embassy in London, to inquire about plutonium-type weapons-frayed nuclear material that had been stolen from a decommissioned Russian nuclear facility. The nuclear material in question appears to be pointing to Iranian hardliners, who are disillusioned by the Iranian government's nuclear deal with the United States. But Minister Bayraz denied Iran's involvement in the theft or trade in nuclear materials. Meanwhile, somewhere in Poland, it appears that some Russians are making a transaction to sell plutonium nuclear material with a man nicknamed Ghost. Because the van they were using looked suspicious, several police officers came over to them and questioned Ghost. However, when the cops insist on checking the inside of the van, Ghost kills them, as well as the Russians, then flees from there and disappears into the crowd. In Virginia, Hurley saw a news report about the incident in Poland, which was accidentally caught on CCTV cameras in the vicinity of the incident. Hurley was able to identify the perpetrator as Ghost, a former Navy SEAL in Orion who is believed to have died in action several years ago. Knowing that his former protege is involved in the plutonium nuclear material trade, Hurley immediately meets Irene, who then assigns Hurley and his team to Istanbul, Turkey, to thwart the nuclear material trade transaction that will be carried out by Ghost and an Iranian man named Sharif. Hurley leaves for Istanbul with Rapp and Victor, where they are greeted by a female agent named Annika, who will assist them during the mission. When Rapp and Annika were watching Sharif and his henchman named Kamil, Rapp suddenly got up and purposely walked towards Kamil, bumped into the man's shoulder and pretended to say he didn't mean to. After that, Hurley and his team set up a plan to thwart the transaction that would be carried out by Ghost, in which Hurley was tasked with disabling the military official in charge of overseeing the transaction on Sharif's orders, while Rapp and Victor monitored Sharif's movements and found Ghost. However, Ghost, who saw Victor's arrival, realized that the man was a member of the Orion team, so Ghost stabbed him to death and left, as did Sharif. Because Victor died and their mission had failed, Hurley then canceled the mission and ordered Rapp to return. However, Rapp ignored his superior's orders and went after Sharif. When he lost track of Sharif, Rapp then intercepted his assistant, Kamil, and threatened him to tell the location of Sharif's whereabouts. Kamil then takes Rapp to Sharif's apartment, where Rapp can easily overthrow all of Sharif's men and shoot Sharif, killing him, and taking his laptop. Although Rapp managed to kill Sharif, which was also one of the tasks in their mission, Hurley did not necessarily praise Rapp's success because he considered Rapp to have acted rashly and could disrupt the entire mission and endanger the lives of many people. But Rapp did not seem to heed his superior's warning. Not long after, Irene came to meet them and ordered them to continue the mission because Ghost managed to get the plutonium and plans to assemble it to be used as a functional nuclear weapon. However, Ghost cannot do it alone and requires a skilled physicist to assemble it. The information leads Hurley and his team to Rome, where the Orion operators identify nuclear physicists who are urged by Ghost to turn it into functional nuclear weapons. While in Rome, Rapp uncovers a co-worker, Annika, as a foreign agent for Iran. She explains that she is working for the mainstream Iranian faction, which is trying to stop the hardliners from acquiring nuclear material. Meanwhile, in another place, Minister Bayraz is having a meeting with Ghost, where it turns out that Minister Bayraz has conspired with Ghost to make nuclear weapons that they will use to attack the United States. The scene then switches to Hurley, who meets his old friend, a former agent named Ashani, who tells Hurley about Minister Bayraz's involvement as the mastermind of all this. However, when he was about to divulge further information to Hurley, suddenly a shot was fired straight at Ashani's head, and he died instantly. The shot was apparently fired by Ghost, who then appeared and caught Hurley. After bringing Hurley to his hiding place, Ghost intends to torture him both physically and mentally when he is about to force Hurley to see the destruction of the United States Army. Ghost then reveals the reason for doing all this, which is to take revenge because he felt hurt when he was dishonorably discharged from the military because he was considered the cause of trouble, even though he had been fighting hard to risk his life to defend his country. However, that is not the main reason. Ghost tells that he can earn a lot of money doing this kind of work. Hearing Ghost's confession, Hurley was instantly furious, not expecting that his former protege could turn into a terrorist who doesn't care about the safety of many people. Meanwhile, Rapp looks very surprised when he finds out that Hurley has been captured by Ghost. Irene then orders Rapp to return to the United States because the mission has been cancelled following Hurley's capture, and Irene will deploy special forces to complete their mission. However, Rapp insists on continuing the mission and frees Hurley. At the CIA safe house in Rome, Annika is being watched by two Mossad agents when Rapp arrives to intercept the car, then frees her. After that, Rapp and Annika work together to find the underground base that Ghost uses to build nuclear devices. On the other hand, Irene and her team know that Rapp is working with Annika to complete the mission, thus asking the special forces to stay alert and act according to his orders. Turning to Ghost, who is torturing Hurley by pulling out his nails one by one while asking about the whereabouts of his team members. But Hurley stood his ground and said nothing. When Minister Bayers demands that the interrogation be completed quickly, Ghost kills him and his henchmen, then activates the nuclear bomb. After infiltrating the tunnel, Rapp and Annika split up, where Annika would enter first, while Rapp would finish off Ghost's minions outside. Although Rapp can defeat them easily, but because Rapp is alone and there are too many of them, Rapp is a little overwhelmed. Luckily, Irene immediately sent special forces to the place. Rapp finally finds and frees Hurley, who is seriously injured. However, Hurley told him to immediately go after Ghost and prevent him from detonating his nuclear bomb. Unexpectedly, Annika is captured by Ghost and used as a hostage. Annika then sacrifices by killing herself with Ghost's weapon to give Rapp a chance to kill Ghost. However, Ghost manages to escape and board the boat with his nuclear bomb. Based on the previous conversation, Hurley concluded that Ghost intended to carry out a kamikaze attack against the U.S. Navy's 6th Fleet. Rapp immediately chases after Ghost's boat, while the 6th Fleet, having been warned of an impending nuclear attack via CIA channels, prepares for the attack. After a fierce battle, Rapp finally manages to kill Ghost, and tries to divert the ship from the 6th Fleet to protect the ship from the explosion, before throwing the nuclear weapon into the sea and escaping in a Navy rescue helicopter sent by Irene to rescue Hurley. Seconds later, the device finally exploded, creating a huge sinkhole and a massive tsunami that inundated the 6th Fleet, but they all survived the explosion. After that, Hurley, who had recovered from his injuries and knew that Rapp was on vacation in Dubai, but didn't say that to Irene, who asked about Rapp's whereabouts. The two of them then watched a broadcast on television, proclaiming that the Iranian faction that tried to obtain nuclear weapons would win the presidential election and blamed the nuclear attack on the CIA. Meanwhile in Dubai, Iran's presidential candidate-elect and his bodyguard enter the elevator where Rapp is already there, smiling at them. The film ends.